In today's show, the Blazers snap a losing streak by beating the Mavs twice over the weekend. Nassir Little returns to the lineup, and suddenly the Blazers are kind of in an okay spot. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen every day, free on all platforms, every single weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. We got a good one for you today. The Blazers, winners over the weekend. They play twice against the Mavericks Saturday and Sunday, and they take care of business in both games, blowing out an undermanned Mavs team. It's what you need to do, and it's what they did. Some wins they absolutely need following a 5-game losing streak. We will recap both of those games, talk about the return of the Blazers' useful depth back to the lineup. Gary Payton's back in the lineup and playing regularly, uptick in minutes. Nassir Little made his return on Sunday. There's some real value in having more bench parts. I think that was obvious over the weekend. And then finally, talk about where the Blazers are. I think it felt like the sky was falling when we last recorded a podcast because they'd lost 5 in a row. When I last recorded a podcast, you didn't do it. You just listened to the podcast. But it felt like the sky was falling a little bit. And I think it's natural to feel that way. But I think it's time to sort of take a gauge of where they are after they've won a couple games against a team that they should have beaten. But first, let's do what we do. Fastest recap in the West. We got 2 games to get through on Saturday night. The Blazers win 136-119 over the Dallas Mavericks, who are playing without Christian Wood, who had tweaked his ankle. They eventually were playing without Tim Hardaway Jr., who was out of that game. They were already missing, very key role players in Maxi Kleber and Dorian Finney-Smith, and Josh Green, who's become a pretty big part of the rotation. The Mavs were undermanned, and then they just looked tired, and the Blazers dominated them. Up 31-30 after one, up 15 at the break, 71-56, up 106-90 and heading into the third quarter, and it didn't seem that close. Like, it was only a 15-point game. That's close in the NBA. That's not that many points. But the Blazers pulled the plug up 21 with 7 minutes left. Dame did not return. The rest of his teammates went to the bench with just under 6 minutes, 5:53, up 24. The bench immediately gave up 7-0 run. So Chauncey Billups took a timeout and told everybody to calm down. But the Blazers rolled in that game after it was somewhat close in the first quarter. I think they were down 8-2, down 6, and it was just like, okay, let's take control. And they did from that point forward and dominated the final 3 quarters. Luka Doncic finished with just 15 points. Damian Lillard had 36 on the other side to go along with 10 assists and just 1 turnover in 29 minutes. 22 and 11 from Yusuf Nurkic, 21 from Anthony Simons that game. Shaedon Sharpe had a really nice night. He had 12. Gary Payton, 10 points, 4 steals, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. In Gary Payton's first shift, in his first 4 minutes, he had 4 steals and 3 fouls. Dude was everywhere. Super active. Really valuable. Guarded Luka Doncic. This game was about the Blazers offense. After the game, Chauncey Billups complimented the Blazers defense, and I thought the defensive plan was pretty good. They doubled Luka every single time he touched the ball. When he touched the ball in the half court, they sent 2 at him and got the ball out of his hands. And it was a good idea. Luka didn't play well. He played 53 minutes in a double overtime win over the Lakers a couple nights before, and he just kind of looked like a dude on E. Like, he shot 1 of 6 from the free throw line. He's been shooting bad from the free throw line all year, but when you bricking free throws, didn't make a 3-pointer. I thought the Blazers' plan against Luka was really, really good. I also just think he looked out of sorts. But you don't apologize for their star player looking out of sorts. You beat the snot out of him. That's what the Blazers did. They beat him by 17. They rolled. Exactly what you're supposed to do against a team that looks like the Mavs did. Portland took almost 40 shots in the paint, 34 shots in the paint, 29 before garbage time. Like, it was just a parade to the rim. The Blazers actually weren't even that effective on defense for my money. The Mavs shot 52.5% from the floor and almost 50% from 3, 48% from 3. They made 22 of 46 3-pointers. this wasn't like this super impactful, dominant defensive performance. It was a good defensive plan that got the ball out of Luka Doncic's hands, and it was a dominant offensive performance from the Blazers. They didn't turn the ball over, just 7 turnovers in this game. Excuse me, just before the guy subbed out, 7 turnovers before the bench got in there and really made it rough. But seven pre-garbage time turnovers. Like they took care of the ball. They made shots of their own. They were shot above 40% from 3. Like this was the offensive juggernaut that they can be when it's rolling. And Dame was excellent. You get a nice night from Ant. You get a nice night from Nurk, and you just, you can drop 136. So then they play again on Sunday nights. That's your fastest recap in the West from game 1. They play again on Sunday night, but Luka Doncic has been sitting out back-to-backs. So it was unlikely he was going to play. They kind of ruled him out a little bit late, but Christian Wood came back and did play in this game. He'd obviously missed the Saturday game, and they really missed him because he's killed the Blazers mostly this year. And he came back and was a problem for the Blazers. And let's go fast recap for this one. The Blazers up 33-31 at after 1. They're up 61-54 at the break, but then Nurk commits his 4th foul like 2 minutes into the second half. 9:58 mark, he goes to the bench in the third quarter. So it's like you're up 7, and then all of a sudden Nurk goes out. Mavs actually take the lead on a few separate occasions, and it just looks like, okay, Spencer Dinwiddie's got it going, Christian Wood's got it going, and the offense it's been darn good, but it hasn't been this just like layup line like it was in the first game. And the Blazers are just up 98-95 at the end of the third quarter. They put in Drew Eubanks after Nurk got in foul trouble, and Eubanks was terrible. So they pulled him. He just couldn't hang. They actually went small and played Jabari Walker at the 5, which a lineup that was decent, and I really liked the look of, but when the fourth quarter started, the Blazers just blew the game open. They're up 98-95 heading into the fourth. Then they outscored the Mavericks 42-28, and including just an absolute burst out of the gates. They over the first 9 minutes, they just changed the game. They won the first 9 minutes of the fourth quarter by 18, and then they said, "See you later," and the bench came in, and that was that. The starters go to the bench up 21 with just under 4 minutes left. Dame had 16 in the fourth quarter. Nurk had 12. So that's 28 between Dame and Nurk. The Mavericks also scored 28 total points in the quarter. Blazers slammed the door shut. Stormed the door shut? I don't think you stormed the door. They slammed the door shut. They win 141-23 to complete the weekend sweep. If you are scoring at home, they are now 12-2 when they score 115 points. This team has been better on defense over the last month or so 5-6 weeks. Absolutely. You just like they've had nights where the offense has absolutely just lost them the game because they've been competitive with their defense. The numbers suggest that they've been like pretty good since Christmas and even a little bit before that. I'm still maybe not as high on their defense as some around the world, but like this team is built to score. Damian Lillard has now had 5 straight 30-point games. They're just running a bunch more pick and rolls, spreading them out, letting Dame do what he does and pick teams apart, and he's getting back to being an elite scorer yet again. He's averaging like 27 and 8, 27 and 7.5 when they were not running as much pick and roll action. So it wasn't like they were like really holding him back, but he's on a tear right now. 5 straight 30-point games, a 50-point game in a game they lost. Like he's been awesome. He's been really, really good. And he was really, really good on Sunday. He finishes with 40 points. And 6 assists, 10 of 17 from the floor, 4 of 9 from deep. He had just 1 turnover in this one. So Damian Lillard over the weekend goes for 16 assists and 2 turnovers in a little over an hour of basketball. Played 29 the other night, played 37 tonight. Like that's 2 full games with the ball in his hands, a bunch. He scores 40-20 from a trio of other Blazers to help Dame out, though. Anthony Simons has 20, Yusuf Nurkic had 20 and hit, including like a 29-foot three-pointer. Jeremy Grant finished with 20 off the bench. Nassir Little came in and he made his debut and had 10. His re-debut, he's played before, but his first game since December 2nd when he fractured a bone in his hip. I want to talk about Nas's debut. I want to talk about Gary Payton's play over the weekends. I want to talk about the Blazers having some parts off the bench and how valuable that is for him. Let's talk Nas. Let's talk GP2 in the second segment. But before we do that, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It is just fantasy sports made easy. I play PrizePicks on my phone. I use the app, but you can also go to prizepicks.com. And how it works is you pick the sport, you pick between 2 and 6 players, and you pick over or under the projections as set by PrizePicks. So I play the NBA, but you can play NFL all playoffs long. You can play NHL while it's rolling along. And for the NBA, you're picking points, rebounds, assists, and you just go above or below the line set by PrizePicks. It's just you versus the projections. No big field, no sharks, no nothing. Just you versus those numbers. If you get them right, you can win up to 25 times if you go 25 times your money if you go 6 for 6. Feeling hot, go ahead and win it. And even better right now, if you are a first-time user, log on to prizepicks.com or download the app and use the promo code when you sign up, Locked On. You will get up to $100 match on your first deposit. They're giving you a 100% match. So if you put in $100, give you $100. You deposit $50, they'll give you $50. It's as simple as that. So go take advantage today. Use that promo code Locked On to get up to $100 on your first deposit. All right. Let's talk about Nassir Little. Nassir Little hadn't played since December 2nd when he sustained a fracture in the ball of his hip, the ball joint of his hip. Sounds bad. Sounds bad. But he returns to the court. It had been reported earlier this week, or the team released a press release that he had ramped up his on-court participation. And even prior to that press release, there had been some reports from people on the scene that said they'd seen him just getting in workouts and doing the things you do to prepare to get back. So, even without returning to practice fully, they get Nassir Little in the game, and he finishes with 10 points in 16 and a half minutes. He was 3 of 5 from 3, only took 1 2-pointer and airballed a pull up from the free throw line. He only had 1 rebound. He blocked 2 shots, including a jumper in the corner. That was a really impressive block. But more than anything else, he provided high level competence off the bench. Not like Nassir Little's not going to win 6th man of the year. There are going to be some nights when he doesn't make 3 of 5 from 3. He's going to make 1 of 5, right? That's the nature of it. But the willingness to shoot, that ability to be in the corner and let it fly, because if I get it, I'm shooting it. A skill that Jabari Walker he just isn't that type of shooter yet at this point in his career. And the Blazers don't have enough bench shooting. Nassir Little, I don't know if he's 60% three-point shooter. I don't think so. But a competent pushing towards league average. I think the league average is right at 36% this year, just as shy of 36%. And he's shooting 34 and some change. So pushing towards league average as a shooter, a really good athlete who can rebound. He played some power forward and allowed them to have real minutes where there was, where you have another backup 4 in there. In that third quarter set, he played power forward next to Jabari Walker when they went small and they were comfortable going small. There was just what I came away thinking on Saturday night, even before I knew Nas was coming back or anything like that. It's GP played so well in his 15 minutes with the steals and the activity and the playmaking that it's man, are the Blazers better when they have a 6th NBA player they can play? Just have a 6th NBA quality rotation player to get in the game. With Nas, they got 7, and I think there's the silver lining of this month where since Nas has been out, the Blazers are averaging just 20 points per game off the bench. Nas had 10 on his own off the bench tonight. They scored more than that because they had some garbage time, but Nas and GP had 15 off the bench. That's not a ton of points, and you're still going to probably need more than that on a lot of nights because you're not going to get 100 from 4 starters like they did in this game. But having 7 functional NBA players, I've probably been lower on the Blazers' depth than most this season. I think coming into the year, I said I maybe was a little lower on the Blazers' depth to the point where many people emailed me and called me silly. But regardless of whether you agree with that take or whatever, it's I think it's been clear that they've needed some help off the bench. And I think there's a silver lining that Shaedon Sharpe, I thought Shaedon Sharpe had a really good weekend. He's still not a good defensive player. He's a pretty big negative on that end, but he's taken strides. Like he had a nice block on Saturday night, even if he was picked on a little bit. But like I thought Shaedon Sharpe played one of his best games on Saturday. I thought he followed up with a totally reasonable game on Sunday. Didn't set the world on fire, but didn't make like heavy mistakes. Was mostly ready to shoot when he caught it. None of those like not being shot ready on the weak side or anything like that. He was, he's an active rebounder. He's kind of figuring out where he plays. He's playing over the other young guys on the bench because he deserves it, not because the Blazers are force feeding him minutes. Like he's the best option they've got there. And because they've had this extended stretch before GP came back and while Nas was out for 6 weeks, Jabari Walker has found himself a rotation spot and is like not great, but like getting the necessary minutes that you need to develop, or getting some valuable minutes. Valuable minutes you need to develop. Shaedon Sharpe has looked really good. He's still going to have a regular role every night, and he's going to play 20 plus every night, 15 to 18, no problem. He has improved a little bit. Like I think no doubt about it. Shaedon Sharpe looked a little bit lost in the middle of December. I think he's kind of out of that cycle and is looking a little bit better. And you couple those valuable minutes of your rookies, your 19 year, 20-year-old getting valuable minutes and getting better, and now you have real minutes you can play with Nassir Little and Gary Payton off the bench. You can mix and match lineups. In the fourth quarter, even when they brought Nurk back at like the 8-minute mark, they played for a few minutes until Jeremy Grant subbed back in with Dame, Ant, Gary Payton, Josh Hart, and Yusuf Nurkic. These are the funky, weird lineups I thought they would deploy. And because it was Davis Bertans playing power forward, a really non-threatening four, no problem to put Josh Hart there. And when I've talked about this a bunch many months ago, but then just like the lineups never came. It's like, this is the idea, right? It's like when you have the opportunity to go small and be funky, put your small funky lineups on there. I thought Josh Hart was really, really good in the defensive glass, just like stealing the ball from Davis Bertans, who's a bad rebounder. Josh finished with 8 points, 12 rebounds, took 3-pointers in this game, airball a couple, ugly misses, went 1 of 6 from 3, but shoot the ball when you have it. He's clearly, there was a conversation between Josh Hart and the coaching staff about him shooting. He was much more aggressive over the weekend after a gnarly end to that Cavs game where he didn't shoot a shot he absolutely should have taken. But like the ability to play funky, weird lineups, the ability to, I think I underestimated how valuable Gary Payton's passing was, not necessarily as an assist guy, but as a connector. He's setting screens, and because they're so comfortable with Nurk shooting 3-pointers now, they can let him set screens, roll to the middle, and swing the ball out. When he's making cuts, he's flipping the side of the floor with crisp passes. In fact, late in this game, in the fourth quarter, they ran a hammer play for Damian Lillard. It sets up as a cut down the wing for like a down screen for Gary Payton to get moving towards the baseline, and then a back screen by Nurk for Dame to get in the corner. That hammer screen from Nurk for Dame to get in the corner, and the idea is that Gary could throw it along the baseline to Dame in the corner. It didn't work. The Mavs blew it up, but it's like, man, can they run some different stuff now with more competent passers? I think Nas's energy, he was called for a goaltend when he was just flying around to block a shot. He ran out to Jaden Hardy and blocked a shot. Like, Nas's energy, Nas's shooting, and just like general competence as an NBA player is going to be really valuable. Gary Payton has showed over the weekend like how impactful he can be, guarding Luka Doncic and forcing turnovers in on Saturday night. And then when it was Spencer Dinwiddie as their most impactful player, who he was guarding in the fourth quarter? He was guarding Spencer Dinwiddie, just like a primary assignment guy. So you can leave Jeremy Grant on the bench because you have GP in there. So you don't have to put Josh Hart in there. You can hide Josh Hart on Davis Bertans and have him just be sort of a rebounder, crasher, help defender type. Like, it's not perfect. And I don't mean to paint this as like, okay, Nassir Little and Gary Payton are back. Now they're dangerous. But like, man, do they just look, it's just like the level of competence, the like increase in the level of competence when you aren't just playing first and second year guys in those bench minutes, and the ability to mix and match and play different looks with those bench minutes. it is such a marked improvement. And as GP continues to learn how he's going to play with his teammates and where he fits, I think he's only going to get better. Naz isn't going to have shooting nights like this every night, but he can help. Before he got hurt, after a really slow start to the season, he was starting to look like a basketball player again. He played really well tonight. Hopefully he can continue to build on that. Having 7 bankable NBA dudes is such an improvement for this team. And so now it's about what's next. And that's what I want to talk about to close the show. There is a tendency when teams lose to say that they will never win again, or maybe it's like a fan thing to feel like they'll never win again. And when they win, to say that they'll never lose. Like it's like they figured it out. They're scoring 138 points a night now against this Dallas Mavericks defense. Yeah, baby, they're scoring 138 points a night. But I don't want to overreact to 2 wins. I've tried my best not to overreact to all the losing, but like I'm telling you, they're not in a bad spot. Let's talk about the spot they're in to close the show. But first, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Fastest, easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. Whatever that action is, you're going to find it on BetOnline. Basketball, hockey, baseball futures, the NFL playoffs. You got all of the action there. And there was a weekend full of games, and there's still one more on Monday night because you're listening to Monday, January 16th show. So if you want to get in on that action, Tom Brady is an underdog at home on a primetime playoff game. I don't know if that means anything to you, but it might mean something to me. In any case, you'll find that. You'll find news, analysis, and podcasts, whatever you're looking for on BetOnline. So don't wait. Go take advantage today. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked on Blazers. Here's the thing. Last time we spoke, the Blazers lost a really demoralizing game to the Cavs, where I thought they played pretty well. I said as much in the show. But that was following a Tuesday game against the Magic where they did not play well. They lost and played terrible. They stunk in that game. And you follow up a stinker home loss to a not good team in the Magic, and then you play well and you lose to a good team. And then you start to look around and say, they've lost 5 in a row. The offense is a mess. What are they going to do? And it really starts to feel like the sky is falling. And I think that is natural and normal and all of those things. Like I try to prepare for this podcast to kind of get a sense of what's going on the internet, and sometimes I'll read r/Rip City on Reddit, probably check it every other day just to make sure I'm not missing sort of the pulse of the fan base. And the pulse of the fan base was panic. It was a bunch of folks panicking. In fact, I got an email from a listener that said like, two separate emails. One, should the Blazers just pull the plug and tank, like the season is a wash? And the other one is like, why, like basically like, is it done? Like, do the Blazers have any hope? And I said, no, they're not going to tank. To one listener who emailed, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com if you want to correspond with me via email. And the other one's like, look at the standings. No, it ain't over. They had, at the time, 42 games left. Like, this is coming off the Orlando loss. Like, 42 games left. I know it feels bad, but it's 3 games. And that's really, really, really how I feel right now. I'm looking at the standings, and I see the Denver Nuggets. You're not catching them. You're not catching the Grizzlies, probably not catching the Pelicans, and you'd have to get hot, and the Kings would have to get cold. Very doable to catch one of the top 4 teams. Everybody else, though, right now today, the Blazers are tied with the Warriors in 8th place at 21-22. A game below 500. It doesn't feel good, but guess what? You beat the Mavs twice. The Blazers are now 2 games behind 5th place Dallas. They are 2 games out of 5th. They looked like crap for like a month. Like, they have not been very good for any sustained stretch, right? Like, they were 10-4, and then basically since then, they have been mostly bad. Like, you've watched them. you know the score of the game. Like, you've watched them. Like, they went 9-17 following the 10-4 start before these 2 wins. Like, they have not been consistently good, and the offense has looked pretty rough for stretches. The defense has been better, but like still overall, they're a pretty consistently below average defense, according to Cleaning the Glass, my preferred stats websites for that type of thing. Like they've got flaws. They got flaws. In fact, in the second segment, I was celebrating them having 7 NBA players on the team. Like, I know what this is that I'm watching. I try to be real and honest on here about kind of my opinions on stuff. I feel like that's the strength of the show, is that I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I'm not a real doomer. I might be a natural pessimist, but I'm not a real doomer. Like, the sky is not falling. It did rain all weekend long. But it was, there is reason to believe that this team, despite all of their warts, is in an okay spot. And here's why. The Dallas Mavericks are missing all of their, not all, shout out to Reggie Bullock, but basically every one of their plus defenders other than Reggie Bullock in the rotation is hurt. Maxi Kleber, Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Green, like, they're missing them. They're really heavily reliant on Luka Doncic, an MVP candidate, and Christian Wood to carry that ship. And after, squeaking by the Lakers in 2 overtimes, they come and get just shellacked by the Blazers here. They have a 2-game edge on Portland. The Clippers, a team that everyone is trying to convince you is good, they are not a good basketball team. Watch a Clippers game. They're not good. They're just not good. They got a bunch of good players. They should be good. They're not good. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. They won today and kind of turn things around, but they lost to the Jokic-less Nuggets earlier this week. Like, that is not a good basketball team. T-Wolves have been playing a lot better. Karl-Anthony Towns will be back. I think they're among these teams that are like sort of between the Blazers and fifth place, probably a team playing the best basketball right now. But you've seen the Wolves, like they have some warts themselves. The Warriors, a team which just kind of been waiting to take off, cannot win a game on the road. You know what they did today? They lost a game on the road in Chicago. They're awful, 4-17 away from San Francisco. Elite in their own building. Super Garbo when they leave the Bay Area. Super Garbo. And then it's your Trailblazers tied with the Warriors. Behind them, the Jazz, they're kind of coming back to earth after, they're kind of catching, like, the league is catching up with them. They're also missing some parts, but like, the Jazz are probably like a 500-ish team with their level of talent. They're back to, slightly below 500. The Suns, an absolute mess. The Thunder, a team with one very, very good basketball player and some intriguing parts, but not like a high level going to make a big leap in the standings. Just a tough team with a superstar. The Lakers, a bad basketball team, and then the teams trying to lose behind them. But like, I don't think any of the teams below the Blazers are like a serious threat. Assuming that when Anthony Davis gets back, we'll check in on the Lakers. But until then, they're bad. They're not good. LeBron James is really good, but they're not good. The Suns are a mess, and they're injured, missing Devin Booker and et al. And they just haven't put it together. They're no good with Book out of the lineup. Like, the Jazz are probably right in the same range as the Blazers, but I think you could argue the Blazers have better talent. I would say that certainly have better top-end talent, probably less depth than Utah, which is a really deep team, but certainly the Blazers have better top-end talent, with Damian Lillard being significantly better than anyone on the Jazz. Like, the Warriors are a mess. The T-Wolves aren't that good. The Clippers are not that good. And the Jazz and the Mavs, are super beat up. Portland's, they're fine. Like, they're in a fine spot. Are they like good? Do I project them to take off? No. But you just watch them lose 5 games and play like absolute, they played like refuse. They played poorly. Caught myself from saying a word I didn't want to say in the podcast there. They played like refuse. They're a mess. They win 2 games. I don't want to crown them. Go ahead and crown them. Shout out to Denny Green. But like, this team, warts and all, is healthier than they've been, with Nassir Little back, integrating Gary Payton, with Damian Lillard on a tear, scoring 30 points in the last 5 games. They're starting to run the offense through their best player, something that I think makes them more dangerous. The Blazers have reason to think, despite all of this nonsense, we're okay. Tuesday night, they play a really good Denver team in Denver. If they lose that game, I'm not going to freak out here on this podcast. Then they come back and they get a bunch of home games. But they do not have this. The Tuesday game against the Nuggets is their final road game of January. This is their stretch to kind of make sure that they don't slip, right? Like, if they're in this same 5 through 11 mix that everyone in the West is kind of stuck in when we get to the end of January, and they're still 2 games out of 5th. Good stuff. They have a chance to be better than that, right? They give a chance to climb higher in the standings. But if they just kind of stick where they are, stay in this mix, and none of the other teams pull away, it's like, I'm just not going to worry about them. If you were measuring this Blazers team by like what they do in the playoffs, first of all, you're missing the fun of the 82 game season. And 2, like, we'll get there and it'll be a sobering reality. I don't see this team as like a high level playoff team, and I haven't all year. But if you see this team as a team that is figuring it out, playing a little bit better, getting a little bit healthy, and still like exactly where you thought they would be at the beginning of the season. At the beginning of the season, I think it was pretty common that most folks said like the Blazers are like a play-in team, but they're good enough and their talent is good enough to avoid the play-in. Well, guess what? They're a game out of 6, 2 games out of 5th. That's avoiding the play-in. They're right where you thought they would be. Did it shake out the way you thought it would? No. Below 500? No. But guess what? There's a bunch of mediocre teams in the West, and the Blazers are right there in that mix. Put themselves in great position with these 2 wins over the Mavs. You know what they did? They beat a team they were better than. The roster that the Mavs tried out on Saturday, Blazers were better than them, and they trounced them. Beat them by 17, and the final 7 minutes were meaningless. Blazers won that game in 41 minutes. Sunday, an even worse version of the Mavs. You know what the Blazers did? They trounced them in the 4th quarter. It took them a little longer than you would like, but they absolutely beat the brakes off them in the opening 9 minutes of the 4th quarter, and that was your ball game. You take care of business. You win the games you're supposed to win. You beat the teams in front of you that are beat up and get them at home and all the good luck things you need to get wins in this league. You do that. Continue to put yourself in position, and guess what? They're going to follow the path that you probably thought was right there for them in October. It's just like that path is 41 wins and not 46 wins, but it doesn't matter. It's all relative to your competition. They're in a good spot. I don't know if they're a good team. In fact, I don't even think they're a good team, but they're in a pretty good spot, all things considered. Come back for tomorrow's show. We will look ahead to the Denver Nuggets game. Got some other fun stuff up my sleeve. Make sure you tune into that one, and then tell your friends to do the same. Like if you enjoy the Trailblazers and you enjoy the podcast, share it with your pals. I would truly appreciate it. Appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.